And welcome to our webinar today on QUBEdocs. It's Ian speaking from Clear Insight, and we're very glad to have each one who has joined us for this webinar today. The webinar is one that we hope you will find useful for, and we're glad for each one that has joined today. As we get started, I will be your initial host, Ian Margerison from Clear Insight, and then a little later on, we're going to move on to Bob Gill, who is lead architect for us, and he will be doing a live demo for you of Clear Insight. And Susan has joined us, president of Clear Insight, and she will be helping us with doing the poll questions and monitoring the chat room as well. So just on that point as well, I want to iterate to each one who's on the call. We are more than happy and would encourage you to make this as interactive and as interesting a session for you. You will see in your GoToMeeting window there an opportunity to enter something into the chat. Please put your questions in there, and we will pick up the questions as we go. And if you would like to talk on the broadcast, please put up your hand and we can unmute you and allow you to contribute to the webinar and ask any questions as we go forward. So just an encouragement to do that as we move forward today. So our little agenda is we're going to do just some introduction and objectives of what we have in the webinar today. We have a couple of audience polls through the progress of the webinar to get some input from each one of you that are on the call and to understand kind of what perspective you're coming from as it relates to Cognos TM1, Cognos Enterprise, Cognos Express, whatever you might be using on your end of things, and where QUBEdocs might be of value to you. So there's a number of polls. They are anonymous, so please do enter your input into the polls. We're going to go then into a description of what QUBEdocs is and try and highlight for you exactly what this solution is and the benefits of it, and then move on to the demonstration with Bob near the bottom half of the hour here, and then Q&A and wrap up at the end. So for some of you who may be on the call who are not aware of us, some who are, we are Clear Insight. We're an advanced IBM business partner, and we focus most of our attention towards the Office of Finance and Financial Performance Management. So that means we spend a lot of time in Cognos TM1, Cognos Express for folks who are maybe using the TM1 portions of that. But we also support our clients in Cognos Business Intelligence and Analytics. And we have a significant expertise in Clarity, a previous product for financial performance management. Consultants with many years of experience across the industry, and as you can see, we operate in a number of industries and work with clients both in Canada and in the U.S. So where we focus our attention is with the Office of Finance and often with IT as well, but particularly to drive better outcomes for the Office of Finance, and in particular to give back time, confidence, and control to individuals in the Office of Finance, leveraging the capacity that they have. And we operate with financial performance management, business intelligence, disclosure management, the predictive space, and in risk and governance to help deliver better outcomes. And so QUBEdocs, the topic of our webinar today, is just one of those capabilities and solutions that will help drive better outcomes for finance and also for IT folks, if there's any IT folks who support these solutions at your organization. And just while we are on that point of supporting the Office of Finance, I just wanted to mention the upcoming IBM Vision Conference coming up May 17th down in Orlando, Florida. And I'm not sure if there's folks on the webinar who are planning on going down and you haven't yet registered or were not aware of it and are interested. And I'll have this a little later as well, but we wanted to just highlight this for you. Of course, you can Google Vision 2015 and find out all about it, and there's registration space there as well. But what we wanted to mention, and you can just write this down there, if you haven't registered and you're going to go or you might be going, jot down our discount code SP15CLR, and if you punch that code in when you register on the IBM website, you will receive an additional $100 discount off your registration at Vision. So write that down, and we'd love to see you at Vision. And my contact information is there too, so by all means let us know, and we'd love to meet up person to person down at Vision. We will be having a booth there as well, so you can always find us there. So our objectives for today, now on this webinar, validate the challenges that are associated with managing a TM1 environment. There's all the applications, the models, the cubes, everything that's involved in there, and creating and maintaining the associated documentation with those models can be quite a challenge. We want to talk a little bit about the value of accurate documentation, being able to understand your changes, and we'll see a little bit as we go through on that. Of course, learn how QUBEdocs works and what it looks like. And then also we, for some of you who may not be familiar with who we are, a clear insight, an opportunity for you to get a little insight into who we are. And of course, we would be more than happy to help you with QUBEdocs, Cognos solutions, including TM1 BI and disclosure management, etc. So our first little audience poll, and Susan, I'll get you to open that up. And the question is, how much pleasure do you get from documenting your Cognos solution? So this is a bit of a mixed question. Answer it, please, 1 of the 5. I love doing documentation. It's my favorite part. I don't mind doing it, therapeutic, etc. Down to number 5, we just don't do it at all. And again, your answers are anonymous, so please, just on your screen, you should be able to select an item there on which one you can use. We'll leave it open for a minute or two as we go through the polls. Excuse me. All right. I think most are in now. Susan, maybe you can close it up there. And you should be able to see the poll there coming up now. And it looks like most are in the we don't do it, and or sorry, that you do it because you have to do it, and some there who just don't do it. And you know, that is the case. My background from many years ago was in the IT area, and we did documentation because we had to, and it was a frustrating part. So that's the beauty of where we're going to go today with QUBEdocs. Okay, if you could close up that poll, Susan. We have one second little poll. How up to date is your documentation of your Cognos solutions? So of the ones who are doing it, I guess anyone who answered no, you could answer as well, and it would be answer number 5 there. But how up to date is your documentation? Is it updated every time there's model changes, or is it just done once and then left at that point? So we'll open up those polls, and we'll let you answer there. Okay, you can close that up. Susan, thank you for that. And so most of you, again, are in, it would take work to make it usable. And isn't that actually the case, especially if our answers are we're doing it because we have to? You know, you get it done, and then it's kind of put on the shelf, and the documentation is done, but unfortunately it's not documentation that becomes usable. It's one thing when it's in an environment that's static, and you can go back to it, but as your environment changes, as new elements are added to your environment, all of a sudden the documentation becomes unusable. It means you would have to do it again. Okay, let's close that up, and we'll continue on. Watchful of our time. So moving on then, what is QUBEdocs? So QUBEdocs It is a solution. It is a tool that gets installed within your TM1 environment and installed into your servers. Where TM1 sits, it also operates on the cloud as well if anybody's using TM1 Cloud. And the TM1 solution plus a series of methods that are within there and abilities for you to edit and tweak that Bob will show you. When that comes together and the QUBEdocs solution is run against your TM1 models, then it's going to deliver meaningful, interactive graphical documentation and analytics on your model. And it's something that can be run on demand, and it's going to be set to be run on a scheduled basis as well to continually keep your documentation up to date. But as you will see, it's not just about that. It will be as you're making changes, as you're building your models, evaluating issues with models, then you can also rerun on demand to help you with that process. So why is QUBEdocs important? Some of this you would well know. It communicates understanding of your TM1 models, of course. And that's not just to the folks in finance, perhaps, for IT people, as well as if you have new staff coming on and they need to learn and they have to support this. It's a perfect way for them to relatively quickly understand what the model is like and be able to support it and maintain it. Many, depending on the industry you're in, have to have documentation up to date for regulatory compliance. As I mentioned, assessing impact in changes in your model is very important. Troubleshooting issues, comparing against different environments, and we have clients who use QUBEdocs extensively where they have multiple regions and separate TM1 instances in each of those regions, but have a requirement that all of those implementations be exactly the same, but when maintained by different people, changes are done, and so they're able to run the QUBEdoc models process against each of those models and compare the differences and understand where the differences lie. And then, as we'll see, for continuous maintenance and administration of your models. So it's much more than just the folks who are in finance, the administrators of your system, developers of systems, and the business user, because it's very intuitive and easy to understand the model so the business users can leverage this as well. At the end of the day, you're going to have reduced costs of support. Obviously, in and of itself, even the cost of spending time to create your documentation on an ongoing basis, and then better management and governance of your system. So some key QUBEdoc benefits. Well, it's user-centric. It's designed for end users so that you can understand and navigate your models. The output that comes from QUBEdocs is something that is it's HTML output, and so it can be read within your browser, so it can be accessible very easily to any number of individuals in your environment. And so it's very easy to expose to all the users that you want to use that. We talked about the updating a little bit, and you'll see that, how it can be updated on a continuous basis in a variety of ways, and then also, of course, to give you the insight on your models. You'll see in that little bullet point there, there's the ability to search your entire models. There's a tremendous search facility within QUBEdocs. So if you're trying to look for a certain element in a certain cube, look for where a certain dimension might be, look for who has gone in most recently and edited the model, you can go into the search facility and you will immediately see all of that, and I'm sure Bob will show you that. Things like errors in your models, where cubes reference to cubes that don't exist, or things like that, those are highlighted and shown to you as well. This is a solution that runs against the underlying TM1 environment. So if you're using TM1 cubes in either Cognos Express, within the TM1 front end itself, within Cognos BI, whatever front end solution you're using, if you have TM1 on the back end, then QUBEdocs will work for you. So what does it provide? there's the technical documentation, first of all, that is generated for you, the data flow and relationships between all the elements in cubes. The commentary on your rules and processes, that's just kind of a highlight of what we can get out of that. Then the applications and models that are in there, and then down to the lowest elements of cubes and dimensions, chores, processes are all provided in the documentation itself. The way it works is at its lowest level, of course, is the elements and attributes, then your rules and your TI processes and your scripts, and then ultimately all the definitions that are within your environment. So all of these things are being documented, and we'll highlight each one of your user-defined applications within that environment. This is an example of the search facility that is in there, and you'll see just in this little screen capture that it's going to be able to search against all of those different elements in your TM1 model. When you look at the applications and how the model generates information on your applications, this is just an example here, and you'll see this live as Bob shows it to you. The application documentation is integrated but independent from the model documentation. Here's an overview of sample model documentation. You'll see a P&L cube in the middle and all the other cubes that relate back to it. There you see a PL detail cube that's in red, and that's highlighting that that's a cube that's being referred to, that the PL cube is looking for, that actually doesn't exist in the model anymore. And so that's where it becomes tremendously powerful when you're trying to identify issues and problems within your TM1 environment and in your TM1 models. Especially for new users of TM1 and new folks coming in, whether they're in finance or in IT, you have the ability to create your own definitions of elements within the solution and to document that, so it becomes an all-in-one resource and place to go to understand how you're using your finance solution, and description and glossary of terms for all of that. And that's all held within the QUBEdocs solution as well. Okay, one of our last few little audience polls now up. How important is it to understand variances between your TM1 servers? So I gave you an example of one client of ours who's comparing different regional servers. In a lot of cases, it's between your production servers and your development servers. So, and Susan, if you can open that up as well. As you're looking at this, when you have a prod system and a dev system, and certainly when you want to put new enhancements in and compare those, do you feel that that is an issue? It's not an issue. Answer one would be nice to know. Right now, it's too much work to compare that. Number three, you need to know and have a process. And number four, need to know, and it's quite hard. So if you could just punch your thoughts into that one right now, we'll give it a minute or two for everybody to answer. Okay, we can just close that up then, Susan. And for the answers that we have in there, we're on two ends of the spectrum of everybody that's joining us today. For some, it's not an issue to compare those two. Maybe you don't have a prod in the development or multiple regions. And for others, it's very important, but it's very difficult to do because you'd have to manually go through each of your elements. So a key benefit of QUBEdocs is being able to understand those variances if that's something that matters to you. When we talk about changes, whether that's changes from dev to prod, the other thing that's probably the most common investigation in changes is if you have one environment and you want to compare this environment to a previous one, because what happens is when you run your QUBEdocs routine, it saves that off as a QUBEdocs documentation instance. You update, manage, make changes to your models. You can then run, even if you only have the one instance, you can run QUBEdocs again and run it against the previous run, so you'll know what's changed from one time to the next within your existing model. And so here's just a little screen capture to just show the before and after, and you'll see that it's just like it would be in a Word review, that kind of thing, where it's showing you what's been removed, what's been added, and what's been changed. And so that's a little example, and Bob, if time permits, will be probably showing you that as well. Some of you may be up to date, and hopefully most of you are up to date on the latest versions of TM1. And the newer versions of TM1 have added in an element of documentation. And so you may be wondering, well, there is some level of documentation in TM1. What's different between that and QUBEdocs? Do I really need QUBEdocs? And this is just, if you haven't seen it before, a little screen capture of the documentation that is in TM1. And so it's really just showing you the links between the cubes. And as we kind of talked about, and as you'll see, there's a lot more to understanding your model than what cubes link to what cubes. And certainly there's missing the ability to document that, to put it into a PDF format and save it off, to be able to distribute it, to do the comparison of changes, to search your environment, so many other things. So IBM has obviously recognized that there is a need for some level of better understanding of the cubes and better understanding of the interrelationship in them, and have started into that with the latest release set. But it really doesn't come close at this point to the information that you're getting out of QUBEdocs now. QUBEdocs has been around for about 5 years now, and has been continually being upgraded and added new and new features to it. And there's a new version coming out just in about another month time. But the version up to date today, new items including support for TM1 on the cloud, of course the different web browsers, the ability to generate change documentation, be able to run it from command line arguments, all sorts of things. So it's continually being invested in. QUBEdocs is now being used by a wide range of companies across North America, including some of the biggest TM1 implementations that IBM has. We have QUBEdocs in with some of those folks. It originally was developed and is maintained from a business partner in New Zealand and Australia, and it's been there long before we got involved and brought it to North America. And so most of the clients with TM1 in New Zealand and Australia all have QUBEdocs as well. So this has been proven in the marketplace for many, many years. Okay, so enough of hearing me, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I would like to turn it over now to Bob, where he can show you it in live format. And please jump on and don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat that either we'll pick up on Q&A, or by all means feel free to put up your hand and we can open it up even while the demo is going on if necessary. So Bob, I'll turn it back to you.
Hi there, thanks Ian. You can just pass over presenter to me. I'll bring up my screen there. But what I want to do is I want to kind of walk through some of the tools that you have in QUBEdocs within the context of a scenario here where, let's imagine that you have a CFO walking up to your desk one day and saying, you know what, I'm looking at my reports, the revenue number is wrong. And you know, let's say for whatever reason, it's your responsibility to get that fixed. So maybe you know what cubes you have or don't have. Maybe you don't. This could be your first day on the job, and it's really falling on you. So what I've heard this as a common challenge, and You know, someone walks up, revenue is wrong, you need to fix it right now. So how do we approach this today, you know, without QUBEdocs? Well, you got to go through and you got to manually review all the code. You're going to start tracing back from the one bad number, what rules affect it, what processes affect it, what feeders affect it, and you got to manually compare lines of code across environments. So all of this is a very, very time-consuming, arduous task when all you have is this tiny little architect tool to go through and navigate and look at the details of several branches down of layers you can look at for rules. And there could be things in the dimensions. Could be a much longer list of TIs to work through, and all of these cubes here could have their own rule file that needs to be reviewed. So suffice it to say, this can be a long, painful task. Add on to that you've got someone standing at your desk rattling the cage saying it needs to be fixed right now. It can create a very stressful situation. So with QUBEdocs, you can just browse the business context and the code in a nice web interface. You'll automatically see the recent changes. You can search everything, and you do more analysis and comparison. So let's work through the same example here where the CFO is telling me something's wrong with revenue and I need to fix it right now. So I can go into my QUBEdocs documentation. So this little website that I have here is something that would be automatically generated on a periodic basis. I can set it to run once a day, once an hour, once a month, whatever makes sense for my implementation. And it's going to generate full documentation on this instance of TM1. I can look, and maybe I don't know what the revenue cube does, and I can see, well, I've got a list of cubes here. And go down and find my revenue cube. Here I see all the dimensions, and some of the stuff I can always see in Architect, but I get, as Ian was describing, I get the nice data flow diagrams to say, well, revenue looks at spread methods. It has some data that comes in from this particular file, and it actually feeds over to income statement and a parameterized piece here. I also have direct links to all the TIs that are relevant here. So I can look into the individual TIs, navigating in a very natural path down to where what I want to see. I can even see the exact rules that are here as well. So I see within the rule file there's a calculation for gross margin, there's a calculation for unit price. Each of these, I have the business context as well as the actual TM1 code inside that file. And I can even added to that, I can see some information. Okay, it was last authored or edited by a particular person on a particular date. So this gives you a little bit more of auditability, transparency around who's changing what when, and does the code match the business context. So in this case, the revenue number, the number that we're looking to change is this one here, this gross margin percent. So right away I see, oh, Bob Gill added a 0 to the factor. So there's a note of a change that I made in here. Now, let's take a step back. Within a minute, I was able to go down to the cube. I found it showed me exactly what had changed. Now let's say I had no idea. I can, by looking at the difference, I can run difference reports through QUBEdocs as well. It will show me only the difference between two instances. They could be instances on the same machine. They could be on different machines. They could even be in different servers. By using the new FTPS connector, these could be completely different continents, data centers, wherever they are. I can run comparisons between them. So here, this is telling me change documentation, my cubes. I see there are 2 modifications here. There's my revenue cube. And as Ian was alluding to, I see the highlighted change. So the gross margin percent used to be the calculation multiplied by 100. And then I came in here and I made it multiplied by 1,000. So very quickly, concisely, I know exactly what changes happened recently, and I can roll it back if I want to, or I can bring it to the surface it to the business to say, this is why the number looks different. Do you want me to roll it back, or is this business context correct? So that's a much less stressful situation than someone coming to my desk and saying, okay, you need to fix this right now, and you've never seen this code before in your life. Now, let's take a step back, and I'll walk through each of these different pieces at a higher level to kind of give you a little more context. When I open up QUBEdocs documentation, I'm looking at the application documentation, the model, business glossary, the quality documentation, and other documents. Application documentation are groupings of cubes, dimensions, and TIs into a natural application set. So in this case, maybe we've got one that's for financial planning. So if I look at my financial planning application, it gives me, I have the application in the middle with all of the related cubes to that application. I have some description around what this application is planning to do. I also have some description of what templates are included here, what dashboards. So it really gives you a high level, the business context of what this thing is supposed to do. In this case, financial planning, so we're trying to do our financial plan for the company, inclusive of capital planning, employee planning, revenue planning, and other things. So I'm just went back to that same higher level. So we looked at application documentation, and application being a group of objects. I can look at individual model documentation. So by looking at individual model documentation, I can see I've got a set of cubes, dimensions, processes across this model here. So expand the items on the left. So I can navigate using the left side. I can navigate through the links in the content pane. And as Ian mentioned, I can also search. I can really search anything. So let's again look for that revenue cube using the search at the top. Punch in revenue. I see it's mentioned in 8 processes, 19 rules, 3 cubes, 6 dimensions, and 2 applications. I keep scrolling down. I have links and descriptions for all of those different pieces. So this can be a much more natural way for someone to browse the content, both business content and code content. So this is a tool useful for business users to ramp them up on what they have access to. And if they ever have a question, well, what is gross margin? What is that defined as? They have the ability to see the true calculation underneath the hood, and it removes this mystery black box effect where they're not sure what's going on underneath. They can see everything. So again, going back to the top level for home, we talked about application documentation, talked a little bit about model documentation. We'll go into more detail on that in a bit. The business glossary, as you can imagine, it gives you you can define all of these different words within the context of this, of the Team 1 solution or within this application. So when we talk about asset light, we know we're measuring data in that. We've got our different asset types. We've got benefits assumptions. We've got references to cubes. All of that is going to be available here automatically through the glossary. Again, I'll go back to home. Quality documentation is something that's brand new in the current version. So this is something that was not available if folks are using QUBEdocs 2.5 and earlier. This looks at the different cubes that are available. It will tell you which ones are documented and which ones are not documented. So maybe there's new cubes that have just been developed, or maybe still in development, and the documentation is not done. This is a proactive notification to say there's things in there that still need to be documented, so just to let us know what the business context is and to provide that holistic view of it. Similarly with dimensions, processes, and chores, we can also set up model integrity checks. Which cubes are not used in applications, which cubes are not used in any cubes, which dimensions have no attributes. So these are common things that signal that there may be something that needs to be refined a bit. So this helps with the quality across the code of the solution, as well as just the visibility of the solution to business users and people developing. And then last but not, other documents is just a simple area. You can add links to in intranet documents, PDFs, really anything you want to make sure that everything's available in this one portal for folks that may be investigating whatever they want to invest. So if we look at a particular cube here, let's go back to our revenue cube. You see I can expand a fair bit down this left navigation here. So I can go in, even now that I'm looking at the individual revenue cube, I see my dimensions within that revenue cube. I can keep going further into those dimensions to see, well, what subsets. So it's very much like navigating Architect or even Performance Modeler, but you're not connected to the system. So if there are folks out there, particularly business users, that may want to know what's available, but you don't want them being able to make changes to a system, this gives them that ability. They can go in and they can see, well, what is the default subset for organization? This is the default subset. These are the other subsets available as well. Okay, going back up to my revenue cube, and even on the left, the right-hand content pane, I still have my nice HTML links to different dimensions within this piece. I still have my data flows, my TIs, my formatted rules. I have the views. It's navigable by the left navigation or the content. If I want to go to a particular rule, I can do that. I want to go right to my gross margin percent. I click on gross margin percent, my unit cost or unit price calculations. Let's look at a particular process. So within my revenue cube, I can see it's using this copy version process. So I click on copy version. Now I can see, well, it's got some information around what this does. This is set within the TM1 cube that QUBEdocs maintains, and these ones here, these prologue comments, any comments that are added inside a TI, they get surfaced right to here. So there's not really a need. There's an ability, if you want to add documentation, add context through what QUBEdocs provides. But if you don't want to do that, you can just code away in TI, and it'll surface the right information here for you. So what data source, where does data go, what are the parameters, again, the data flow for this particular TI, and even the detail. So I can look at the prologue, the data tab, epilogue, it's all right here. So someone that is navigating through the system, they can look at the content of any TI, and they won't be connected to a true live TM1 instance, which I think reduces a lot of risk, particularly when folks are ramping up on something they haven't seen before. If they mistakenly type an extra character in when they don't, and when they really shouldn't, that can have disastrous consequences. So this is all looking at the end product of QUBEdocs. This is the documentation that it creates. I want to take a look now at how it creates that. So this is the QUBEdocs user interface. It's a thick client that you normally install on your server. It can run anywhere. It doesn't need to run on the server though. You would set up a connection. The TM1 server name, the configuration directory, the database directory. These can also be SFTP links. So it doesn't need to be on the same server. It doesn't even need to be on the same network. You could just put an SFTP path right in here with the associated credentials. It will go off with the secure FTP connection, grab the files and do the documentation. As Ian mentioned, each time it does that, it creates a snapshot copy of all the metadata that it's gathered. And that provides the ability to do comparisons here. So these could be on different servers. I can compare as a baseline or revised version in one of these. So let's say that I know that number 7 here was my baseline. I just click that one. I click the next one. It's already figured out that 7 is my baseline, 8 is my revised. I can generate the change documentation and output it to a folder. Once that runs, I can then look at the change documentation, which is in the very same format as we had before. So here, this is just the changes now. As I navigate through, it's going to tell me this change documentation piece. Well, I have 2 cubes that have changed. I can see ones that are added or omissions, early deletions, or modified. So here, here's my revenue cube. So this tells me very quickly there's a difference in the date stamp here. So that's the one signal something's changed. It goes through and does a text comparison with nice highlighting to say, well, there's something new that's changed here. So as a general comment, does QUBEdocs find this small change? Well, yes, it does. So I don't need to search through all of the different rule files, all the different TIs, and any other code that could be sitting on the server. I see very quickly what changes have happened between 2 versions here. I can clear these out if I want to. I can regenerate old documentation. So that can be handy if you, in an environment where you have strict change control, you can really have change control now around your documentation. So you can see, well, what was the documentation that was generated as part of a particular release? So you can go back and you've got that right here. So you can generate that documentation at any time. Okay, so we've talked about what's available in QUBEdocs for the documentation, the application documentation, the model documentation, quality, these different pieces here. We talked about the change documentation. We've looked at the QUBEdocs user interface and how you can set up connections to whatever you need to do, and generate and compare. Let's see, a moment here. Okay, so let's look back. So we've gone back to our example. If we have QUBEdocs, we can just browse everything in a very natural business context, looking at the code. We can automatically see what's changed. We can search everything, and we're doing more analysis than comparison. So QUBEdocs covers cubes, dimensions, processes. It does data flows for the rules and processes. You can add comments through certain tags. It does the HTML formatting to make things nicely displayed over a web browser. And what I think is the most important thing is change detection. That one feature that they have now, which is relatively new, I think it's only in version 2.5 that they added change detection. That's very powerful. So how do we generate the documentation? We can do that through the QUBEdocs user interface. We can also schedule it. It doesn't need to be done by someone. It can be scheduled to run periodically as needed. We can also generate the comparisons. We can very quickly find out what in this case, our revenue cube does. We're able to search for revenue. We're able to see the details, what processes, rule data are there. Quality checks. QUBEdocs cubes. So let's take a quick look at QUBEdocs cubes while we have that there. So here I have Architect open. So for folks that are familiar with it, this will be the cubes that would be naturally part of my solution. QUBEdocs saves its data in a cube to be consistent with TM1. I can go into these and I can manage these right inside TM1. And what I quite like is they've gone ahead and they've even created certain views that will walk you through any kind of additional documentation that you want to do. And I have to underscore that this is not required. QUBEdocs works fine if you never ever use any of this stuff. But you can update object definitions, all these different views that are here. You can do this right from inside TM1 if you want to. You can even rule some of this in or create TIs to up this if you really wanted to update this. So what I want to show here is that this is an exceptionally flexible automated documentation tool that will surface not only the code changes and the code itself, but business context. And it itself can be automated for different pieces if you choose to. So I think with that, Ian, I'll pass it back to you if we want to do any Q&A, but I think I've gone through the key pieces I wanted to get through on the demo.
All right, wonderful, Bob. Thank you very much for that. So let me just grab things back here. You flipping it back to me, Bob, or am I grabbing it?
I think you'll need to grab it there.
All right. Folks should be able to see my screen now, hopefully. And so Bob has taken us through quite an extensive demo and probably answered a lot of the questions that you do have. Our last little poll and a question for you folks, and this is helpful for us to understand as folks are seeing this for the first time. Which of the following do you see as the top QUBEdocs benefits? And we'll let you pick, unlike the other ones, this one pick all that apply. And Susan, if you could open this up. Is the benefits primarily eliminate the manual task of documenting, or is it for satisfying requirements, for corrections, for comparing instances, or to make people happy, improve client personal employee satisfaction so they don't have to manually do that? So I'll let you fill that out on your poll there, and I'll ask each one to contribute. We'll give it another few seconds. All right, we can close that up, Susan. And so as you can see there, simplify the model corrections and enhancements. That's very interesting. You know, if you've had trouble trying to find out where issues were in the model, I think you would have seen then from what Bob has done how easy it is to really find where there might be outstanding issues, and then also make administrators and users happy. If you're one of the ones who would have to manually be doing that documentation, I think you'd be pretty happy too. So thank you for that. All right, so just to, well, we got Q&A time there. I'm not sure if there is any questions that have come up. Please feel free to type it in, or if there's any there right now. Is there any questions right now, Susan?
No, sorry, Ian, there are no questions right now.
Okay, very good. Thank you. The next slide here, if you do have any questions, you can contact us. Actually, that'll be the next slide with our contact information. If you like what you saw in QUBEdocs and you are interested for yourself, or you need to bring it up the line and pricing, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I can provide you with some pricing on QUBEdocs fairly quickly. And the installation and getting up to speed is literally hours, and you're using QUBEdocs live in your environment. So please do reach out to us for that. If you would like to set up a demo in your environment with QUBEdocs and test that out, we're happy to do that as well. set up a demo just for you and other folks in the environment. We're happy to do all those kind of things, and even a QUBEdocs trial license could be made available. And then, of course, to contact us for any TM1 support, consulting, training, all those types of things, we're here for you. There's the contact information. You can email me, ian.margerison@clearinsight.ca. If you would like a copy of this presentation, please reach out to me and let me know, and I can share the presentation with you. And then lastly, again, don't forget, if you're going to be coming to Vision, jot down our discount code SP15CLR when you're registering, and you'll get an extra $100 off your Vision registration, and we would love to see you down there. We will have QUBEdocs with us down there as well, and so we'll be able to share that with you then as well. And I think that is the end of it for our presentation today. And we appreciate your time. We're getting you out a couple of minutes early, and so thank you for joining us here at Clear Insight for QUBEdocs, and please don't hesitate to reach out if we can be of assistance with any of those items we've mentioned. Have yourself a great rest of the day, and we will look forward to touching base with you either down at Vision or on our next webinar.